Alright, so in this video I'll be covering chapter 177 of the Berserk manga, which starts the Millennium Falcon arc of the series and ultimately is a vital chapter in the overall story of Berserk, primarily because it links one part of the series to the other. Now you might ask why I am starting out from chapter 177 instead of chapter 1, which should have been a logical introduction to this whole series that I'm about to start off. The reason behind this is pretty simple. I've been racking my brain and trying to cover Berserk in depth for a very long time. My videos on the Vagabond series actually did something good in that regard, even though they didn't get as much traction as they should have, but what they did do was to give me the motivation to start this whole thing. Now because of me overthinking this, I had read chapter 1 so many times for research purposes that I frankly got overwhelmed with the journey, so it's because of this reason that I'm going to start off by covering chapter 177 and the Millennium Falcon arc, and then building up on it till I reach the final chapter. When I'm finished with that, I will probably go back to the first chapter and discuss it in detail afterwards. This whole series will also give me the opportunity to put my heart out with the discourse as I did with the Vagabond Volume 1 series, where I literally went all out in discussing the first 10 chapters. This is not a plug, by the way, just a statement because it was a positive step in the right direction for this channel. So if you like what I have to say, then do watch this video and leave a like as well as subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much. So let's begin chapter 177. Now the reason behind chapter 177 being this very important chapter is that it links one part of Berserk to the other. Just a couple of chapters before this chapter, 174 or 175, I can't really remember, we saw the birth of Griffith in the real world after the whole mess that was created in the Conviction arc. The whole festival of madness finally culminated in the birth of Griffith in the physical world. One of the most striking things about that chapter was the presence of Guts there to witness the whole madness that culminated in the birth ceremony. What was even more interesting was Guts' face when he saw Griffith come back. The ramifications of that whole event start to take shape in this chapter because at that moment, Guts didn't get a proper chance to fight or get consumed by anger when seeing Griffith. Rather, he was in shock and awe of Griffith's majesty the moment he was reborn. I've already discussed this extensively in another video on my channel which discusses Guts' whole reaction to this whole scene. Overall, it was a peak chapter from a peak arc, and I can say that aside from the eclipse, that scene really made Berserk into what it is today. Another important thing about chapter 177 is that it turns the world of Berserk totally topsy-turvy. We start the chapter with some kids running in a forest. The kids are brothers, with the older one telling his younger brother not to go deeper into the woods. The latter isn't listening to him as he is looking for fairies inside the forest. A couple of panels later, we see the brothers venture deeper into the forest and we are greeted by this panel. A forest landscape that looks as though it is right out of a fairy tale. This panel is one of the reasons why I cover Berserk. The artwork is just insane on this. I really want to do a live stream and discuss Berserk, but I don't know, maybe you guys in the comments section can tell me whether doing a live session would be something you'd all be interested in. But moving on. They see the forest and realize that it is out of a dreamscape or a fantasy. Indeed, the forest resembles an image that is directly taken from Hansel and Gretel or the Little Red Riding Hood. The trees in the forest are different in that the roots are growing outwards from the ground, and God knows how many roots are underground. The labyrinthine nature of this whole forestscape not only shows the majesty of the artwork and the amount of effort put in by Kentaro Miura, but also shows that with Griffith's rebirth, the world became even more fantastic, as exemplified in this scene and a myriad of other moments that come down the road during the Millennium Falcon arc. Now let's discuss how the world was before and after Griffith became a God Hand member. Before the eclipse, the astral world wasn't depicted in the most vivid of ways. True enough, the pre-eclipse Berserk was a medieval landscape with knights, kings, mercenary groups and whatnot. It was only after the eclipse that we began to see hints of astral creatures making their way into the real world. The first instance of this came with the Lost Children arc, and the second one came with the Conviction arc. I would say that the physical and astral merger was shown significantly more in the Lost Children arc than in the Conviction arc. In the latter, the divide between the worlds was depicted as a weak shell that was ready to break in any moment. What I'm trying to say is that the Conviction arc didn't have that much of an astral vibe compared to the Lost Children arc, because the Lost Children arc without a doubt was as insane as it could get because of the presence of pseudo-apostle elves, the whole ruler of the elf shtick of Rosine, and of course the insanity of Guts. I apologize for the tangent, by the way, but it does tie into chapter 177 because this whole astral divide was broken and the merger was shown in a more vivid manner during the Millennium Falcon arc, which eventually led to the advent of Fantasia. So these 4 arcs slowly broke the divide and gave us unreal imagery and fights during the Fantasia arc. Now another panel that is worthy of discussion in this video is this whole scene where the kids are inside of the forest and they're looking upwards towards the sky. From the sky we see a hulkish monster flying through the sky carrying something in his hand. Nosferatu Zodd the Great is carrying with him the new Kanye who's ready to save the world from evil Kardashians like the King of Midland and Ganishka. Now this is the point where the children understand that things are very different from what they're used to seeing. The status quo is changing and the world is taking a fantastical turn with fairies, flying lions, and magical forests. All of this ties into the changes taking place in the world. This whole forest sequence in the manga ends with a statement. The narrator says, like a folktale told by elders to children, as if it might have been there all along. Something surely breathed within the silence. Just below that statement, we see a tree from the aforementioned forest and we see a goblin-esque creature creeping outside. The most striking thing about this goblin is that he is doing a hee-hee, which further confirms the theory that Griffith's rebirth might have caused the resurrection of Michael Jackson. So this culminates this Fantasia-like sequence in Berserk. In the next sequence, we see Erika standing beside Godo's grave, grieving over the loss of her father to time and old age. Now the influence of Godo on Erika is important to discuss here because of the fact that he created a very strong-willed individual in the form of Erika. Not only did he influence Guts to let go of his ways and improve himself, which is a whole discussion in and of itself, but he also influenced Erika in a similar manner. How did he do that? Well, from the Fantasia arc, we can clearly see that Erika is not a coward. When given the opportunity, Erika didn't stay in Fantasia but rather went alongside Rickard, knowing full well that the world that she was about to enter wouldn't be as safe as Fantasia, which is a haven for mankind as I'm making this video. It clearly shows that Erika would rather follow the strong will inherited from her father rather than stay in safety. Of course, being together with Rickard, the only other family member she has, also played a major role in this whole decision. But Godo's influence cannot be disregarded altogether. Again, this whole discussion of Godo's influence is me trying to piece together a picture of Erika's life and should not be taken as canon. I have to clarify this so that I don't get confused for being a fanfiction peddler. As Erika is standing, we see Guts and Kaskar return to Godo's place from St. Albion. This whole sequence is a very emotional one because Guts is saddened somewhat by the death of Godo. Again, that influence that I talked about previously plays a major role in Guts being affected by Godo's death. Besides the power-ups that Godo gave Guts, his influence was perhaps seen in the brightest of lights when he prompted Guts to become a better human being. So in the next few panels, Erika tells Guts that Godo was glad to see him before he passed, and that he did not want Guts to see him on his deathbed. Again, this shows the strong-headed nature of Godo and the overall chemistry of the two that resembles that of a father and son. If there are two father figures to Guts in Berserk, it is Godo and the Skull Knight, with the Calcium Daddy also embodying the role of a partner in crime. A few panels later, we see Guts promising that he will stay with Erika and Rickard, but he only half means it. His mind is on Griffith and he thinks about the sheer humanness and beauty of Griffith in that moment, and how he lost his will to fight during that time. He could not land a hit on Griffith. Now, this is one of the most important aspects of Guts' train of thought, because he, at this point, is filled with regret over the fact that all this time, he was chasing nothing but a ghost, and in the two moments he had the opportunity, he could not do anything. The first instance of him meeting Griffith was pure chance because had the Count not awakened his behelit once again, he would still be chasing Griffith for naught. 2 years of escapism, anger, hate, and revenge were all for naught. So afterwards, we see a conversation between him and Erica where she says that someone came to visit Rickard, and that the person was someone very beautiful, almost like a girl, which ultimately leads to this image of Griffith's back. This ends the chapter. So this is the beginning of the Millennium Falcon arc, which begins with elements of fantasy, regrets, and some level of self-reflection. So on to 178.